What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you another series of things in Divinity Original Sin 2 that you may have missed. So these are in no particular order, and hopefully some of you will have not heard of all of them. Last thing before we just jump into it, gonna be some tiny spoilers here and there in regards to the last thing. For the most part, I try to keep it away from that kind of stuff for these videos, but the last one I want to talk about, there's just no way to get around the spoiler part of it. But with that out of the way, let's jump into it. So our first detail is that once you leave Fort Joy in the regular game, you will get access to a magic mirror on the Lady Vengeance. Now this is used to respec your character as well as change appearance, but what some people might not be aware of is that you can actually use this to change the appearance of your origin characters as well, otherwise known as the companions you have with you, in addition to the character you are playing. You can change how they look. Now certain set features that are important to their character are not changeable. For instance, you cannot change the Red Prince's skin color because he's supposed to be bright red. And you can't change Sabile's scar on her face. That won't go away. But outside of that, you're free to change their appearance within the regular bounds of what that race's appearance options are. Alright, second thing. So, there are death fog barrels in the game. That's relatively known, I imagine. Death fog is this fog that will just straight up kill any living thing that enters it, including characters, but also enemies. Now, the only spot in the game where you can actually come across large quantities of it that you can just pick up in barrels and then use is in the last act of the game. There is a couple barrels you can get access to right at the very beginning of the game. You just have to build your character with picking these up in mind, because these barrels are very heavy. I believe they weigh 95 pounds, and your base character's inventory is like 100. So you have to put some points into strength, and also putting a point into telekinesis helps as well. But in the prologue, when you are on the Magister ship getting transported to Fort Joy, you'll of course be attacked, but you'll come across a room that is storing death fog. And if you know what's in there and you are quick, you can run in there and grab the death fog before the Kraken whips its tentacles around and destroys the barrels. Now, if you're playing an undead character, this is easier because you don't have to worry about your positioning after the fact, because regardless of whether or not you pick up the barrels, the room will still fill with death fog, and as a result, if you're playing a living character, you will have to very quickly retreat out of the death fog to not die. Now, this is awesome because this basically turns most fights with anything that isn't undead into immediate win, which can help in a large variety of situations. Alright, so that brings us to our third detail. This is actually the fact that lava exists in the game, and you can basically just kill people with it. So it's easy to kind of get in your head that you need to avoid lava because it's instant death. However, it's also instant death for your enemies, and I think people forget that. For instance, especially on the Nameless Isle where there's a lot of lava, it's very easy to use things like the teleport ability or the terrain swap metamorph ability to move lava around from where you find it directly under enemies where they will die immediately. For instance here, before I even engage a conversation with the Shadow Prince, I can just teleport him into the lava nearby and instantly kill him. But again, you can also use Terrain Swap. Terrain Swap is arguably more useful here, because if you're willing to wait for the cooldown, you can actually take the lava from where it is and move it significantly far away just by using Terrain Swap over and over again. So keep that in mind the next time you're having problems with a boss that doesn't require you to exit the overworld area. You can just move some lava around if you can find it and then use it to kill that boss. It might take a little while, especially with terrain swap and moving it around, but it's very effective. Alright, our fourth detail. Getting into some spoiler territory here, just as a heads up. So, the last act of the game sees you trying to access a tomb. One of the big roadblocks to that is the Path of Blood. Now, the Path of Blood normally requires you to do a bunch of quests and find a workaround, because what the Path of Blood is actually a statue of Lucian that asks 4 questions to deem whether or not you are pure enough to enter the tomb. Now, normally, just through the act of playing the game, it's basically impossible to pass this test, because even if you lie, the statue knows, and it kills you, as we see when we first walk up to it, and someone fails that test and dies. Now, the statue's going to ask if you've ever killed anybody, if you've ever stole anything, if you've ever consumed source from someone else, say a source vampirism skill, which you'll have done to get past the Shriekers somewhere at some point, or if you are in league with the Void. That one's harder to do, most people haven't done that one. But more than likely you've killed something, stolen something, or consumed source to get to that tomb, which means you have to go through the regular quests to get around this thing. However, there is a very easy workaround to do this. And that's simply to, once you get to the Path of Blood, go back to the Lady Vengeance, talk to Sergeant Zarilla, which is where we hire our mercenaries from, hire any mercenary, take that mercenary directly to the Path of Blood before letting them do anything, and then use that mercenary to talk to the statue, and it will then pass all of the tests because that character hasn't done literally anything, and thus it will be deemed pure and open the way past the Path of Blood. This is especially cool because if you do this, that character actually gets the Pure tag, which is a permanent wings ability. Alright, and then for our last detail, this is actually kind of about how to get one of the more rare achievements, the Isle of Last Resort. So in Act 2, you are tasked with finding all of the Source Masters, or at least a few of them, and learning more about Source and expanding your ability to use it. However, you can refuse a Master of Source's teachings. If you were to refuse all of them, what would happen? Well, to put it very simply, Malady is then forced to make a deal with a demon to learn the location of the Nameless Isle, which is the next act of the game, and this results in her death in Act 4. This is non-canonical, just factually. Fallen Heroes, which is supposed to take place 2 years after Divinity Original Sin 2, shows Malady alive and well, so this is definitely not what happens. But for this achievement, you basically need to exhaust every option for expanding your source. It's not enough to just not do them. You have to do them and then actively refuse to learn. So you have to find all of the Source Masters. I believe there's 6 or 7 off the top of my head. You can do their quests or kill them, but basically the option has to be gone. It's easier to just do their quest and then refuse it. Some of them fight you regardless. And this gets especially tricky with Jehan and the Advocate because each of them wants you to do something. The Advocate will give you a point for free if you talk to him. But basically you need to go kill him, the Advocate that is, report back to Jehan that you did it, and then refuse Jehan's lesson. And then with the other Source Masters, same thing. Easier to do their quest for the experience and then refuse to learn. Once you've refused and exhausted all of your options, Malady sends you a messenger, calls you an idiot, and goes and makes a deal with the demon to learn the location of the Nameless Isle, as I mentioned, and then ta-da, you get your achievement. The second rarest achievement in the game, I believe, actually, behind the Honor Mode run. So there you go, guys. 5 details in the game that you may have missed. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.